aggressive do you want to be?
But there are so many health ramifications that come with it.
When you create your business,
Because I had no idea what you were talking about.
that's where I come in.
Yeah.
I admire you.
Well, a discussion that you really need to have with yourself.
If you want it bad enough,
As far as like investing, what would you recommend?
you're going to make it work. What's good, fam? Welcome to Financial Fitness, a podcast where taxes and finances meet the health and fitness industry. I'm Sam Razban-Nia. I assist taxpayers, specifically business owners and entrepreneurs, with all their accounting needs. And right now, I'm specializing in the fitness industry because it's one of my passions. Today, we have a special guest. His name is Ken Garcia. He is IFBB Classic Physique Pro and independent trainer at Enrich Fitness in Burbank right now. Ken, nice to have you.
Sam, how's it going?
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you.
having me. First podcast ever, so I'm a little nervous, but happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So Ken, let's start by getting to know you a little bit more and, what your background is and how you came to be who you are today. Tell me about yourself.
Oh man, it's going to be a long story, but I'll try to truncate it as best I can. So basically, I started out as a teacher, which a lot of people don't know. I was a middle school teacher. I taught English and history. And during that time, I was kind of just lifting casually. And honestly, it's something that I really enjoyed. It was a hobby at the time, and it's just something that made me really happy. Just the idea of self-improvement, lifting weights, and just having that hour to myself to kind of de-stress from the world. So it was kind of like therapy for me at that point in time. And then eventually I hired my first coach, who was Miguel Mendoza. He's better known as Lifting Peanuts on Instagram. He was my first prep coach. He prepped me through 3 shows, and then eventually fell in love with it after the first one. And then the rest is history. I left my teaching job, which was very scary. You have a stable job, stable career, insurance, salary, all of that, and you're leaving it to pursue a passion that isn't necessarily financially stable.
And what were you teaching, by the way? Like, was it grade school? Was it which grades were you teaching?
I was teaching middle school, so 6th to 8th grade, and yeah, so primarily taught the 6th graders, so still little babies.
Wow, that's a hard job. That's a hard job.
I loved it though. Honestly, I did love it, but it wasn't a passion for me. And yeah, so eventually I just took the leap and went into personal training and haven't looked back since.
So were you doing all your training after you were teaching?
Yeah.
And just
exactly.
Okay.
It was exactly that. Yeah. So after I would teach, I would get into work at like 6 a.m., have all my meals first, prep all my meals in the morning or the night before, come into work at 6, prep for all my classes for the day, and then leave work at around 4 to 5, get ready at the gym, or get ready to go to the gym, and then would do all that at night, grade some papers when I got home, and then meal prepped some more, and then went to bed, and then did it all over. But that was the most fun thing for me to do, was the prepping and going to the gym. And that's why slowly I started to realize that teaching wasn't for me. I kind of grew up around education. My stepfather was a teacher, eventually became a principal. He's retiring soon, so congratulations to him.
Congrats.
My mom is a special education teacher's assistant. She's been volunteering at my school since I was like 5 and eventually became employed at the school too. So education has been ingrained in me for a long time. And honestly, I felt kind of pressured to go into that field because of my parents. But yeah, slowly over time, I realized it just wasn't for me. And I figured I was doing the kids a disservice for not fully being present for them. Some days I would kind of just go through the lessons and not really dig deeper as I should have or as I wanted to. And yeah, decided, I need to do what's best for me and leave it behind.
How long were you teaching before you kind of made that decision that it wasn't right for you? Like, what was the
I was teaching for about 5 years. It was
Five
a
years.
long time. Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly, it was about like year 3. I was like, you know what? This really isn't for me. So the last 2 years really was a struggle for me to even just get up and go to work. I taught through COVID too, which was also super difficult as well, all online. There just wasn't the engagement that I liked. And honestly, that's one part of the job that I liked was the engagement with the kids, and seeing them grow from the first day to the last day, and then seeing them the following year, and they're like 3 inches taller than me. So that was definitely an aspect that I enjoyed working with the kids. But yeah, just I didn't see myself teaching for the rest of my life. So
Makes sense.
here I am today.
The coach that you first had,
Hmm.
how did you meet him, or or actually, who inspired you to get into that? How did you, see bodybuilding or fitness training? Like, who did you see that made you even, get that idea of, this is what's right for me. This is my
Hmm.
passion. How did
Hmm.
that happen?
I think it kind of just started. Honestly, I didn't really know a lot about the bodybuilding world when I started. It was kind of just going in the gym, just to train, because my uncle had done it for a long time, so I'd always seen him training, and it kind of just always interested me because I was always kind of the skinny, scrawny kid growing up.
I don't see that, guys. I don't know. I don't
I
know how
was
that's
120
possible.
pounds out of high school. Now I'm like 230. So,
Wow.
so yeah, so it was that too. It was also kind of just a self-esteem thing too. Um, Being kind of that small kid and not really having the confidence that I wanted. It was kind of self-improvement too, going to the gym. And as far as like inspiration, I guess the first kind of notion of bodybuilding, I think everyone kind of really had was from Arnold,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pumping iron and all that. And then eventually dug a little deeper and then learned about Stan McQuay, surprisingly enough. And if you know me already, I work with Stan McQuay. I'm under his team, Physique Inc. And the reason why he was kind of an inspirational figure to me was the fact that he was kind of like the first Asian bodybuilder to really make it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And being Filipino myself, he's half Japanese. It was pretty cool to see kind of an Asian figure rising up through the ranks and seeing him in magazines and all that. It was pretty cool. And it was pretty surreal meeting him for the first time and now working with him. We co-coach some clients together, so it's pretty cool.
So,
So,
being a part of Physique Inc. with him right now, or how did you actually meet him? Like,
mhm.
how did that meeting come about?
Oh man, so I kind of had communication issues with my first coach, and
Okay.
eventually ended up splitting ways about 4 weeks out from my prep. Um,
For your first ever show,
no,
or
it's my second show.
okay, that would have been
Second,
rough if it was the
yeah,
first
yeah, it
ever.
was
Yeah.
the first. Yeah, we
Okay.
were doing pretty well together, my first coach and I. But it was about I think our second or third show. Just communication wasn't there, so we ended up splitting ways. It was mutual. And then I was looking for coaches at the time, and I really didn't know who to pick because there's a lot of coaches you can go to, but I really wanted to make the right choice and also someone who would take me in 4 weeks into a show or 4 weeks out from a show. So one of the options was Andrew Walker,
Hmm.
who's a great friend of mine now, who's also my current coach as well. And eventually we got into contact through a friend of mine, Sele. So props to Sele if you're watching.
Shout out.
Yeah, so I was trying to get into contact with Walker, but I couldn't get him through his DMs or through his emails. So I messaged my friend Sele, who was a current client of Walker at the time, and he got us into communication and he prepped me for the first show. And that's how I officially joined Physique Inc. And the rest is history.
Oh
So
man.
I've been working with him since 2001. He turned me pro. We did 2 pro shows together, working on an off season right now. So super grateful for Walker. Shout out to Walker as well,
A
and the
lot of
entire
a lot of
Physique Inc.
shout
team.
outs. I
Yeah.
love it.
So yeah.
So, Ken, something that I wanted to ask you is now that you are an independent trainer,
Mhm.
you left the teaching world. You said it's not right for me, which is honestly something that I admire because that was part of my path of not so much the career, the profession, but where or what kind of situation I was in with a company
Mhm.
versus being my own entrepreneur.
Mhm.
So, I decided after about a decade, it took me twice as long as you, that I needed to do my own thing. I wasn't feeling that passion either for the tax and accounting field. Everyone calls me a nerd, guys, but I really do love this profession, and I said to myself, I want something more. I want to be able to connect with clients in a way that makes me feel good, and not just be behind a computer and working for someone, putting those hours in, and not getting that fulfillment that I believe that I deserve, and I think I should be getting from the life that I'm living. So, as you were transitioning to become an independent trainer, what is a challenge you faced? What are some difficulties and challenges you faced to to build this for Ken Fitness and Physique Inc? So, what is that like?
It's very challenging, man. And as you know, as someone who runs a business yourself, it's scary. You are solely responsible for your income. If you don't work, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And it's challenging. I mean, it just comes with everything. I mean, you are responsible for your clientele. You're still responsible for all your bills. You're responsible for all your relationships and making everything work. And a lot of people, kind of glorify this entrepreneurship, leave the 9 to 5. But when you leave the 9 to 5, you're working 24/7.
Exactly.
It doesn't stop, right? And I'm
Exactly.
sure you have experience with that.
Yeah. We're working right now, guys. This is
Yeah.
marketing. It's a write-off.
Speaking of write-offs, which I definitely want to get into later, but yeah, so it's challenging, man. And yeah, just getting started is honestly the hardest part. Taking
The
that,
push,
yes,
the leap.
exactly. And honestly, one of the people that really helped me with this leap, his name is Ronnie Camacho. Another shout out. Thank you, Ronnie. He is my mentor, kind of my mindset coach, posing coach, training coach as well. I had to do a lot of talking, conversation with him, and yeah, he eventually said, you can do it. Just take the leap of faith and start your own business. And that's what I did. But it is challenging. What are some challenges that you kind of have gone through starting your own? Because, you were like, we're in very similar positions. You were in your job for 10 years.
10
You
years.
have that stability.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you are kind of out in the open water and doing your own thing. What's that like?
I would have to say the biggest challenge that I had was also the leap. I didn't believe in myself as much as I should have, but one day I said that enough was enough, and I took I took that leap, and I said to myself, if I really want to build the life that I'm happy with, that I can see myself be proud of in the future, then I have to go all in and wholeheartedly just push for it. I would have to say that something that I was a little bit fortunate about is I did keep a small nest egg in order to pursue what I'm doing right now. And, that's something that I want to tell you guys and the new entrepreneurs and business owners. Obviously, some people are like, I want to go all in, and they maybe don't have any money, but they're doing their best to scrape by and believe in themselves that much and get that money on a consistent basis. Some entrepreneurs are, even though they have that passion and drive, maybe financially they're still, a little bit on the non-risky side. So they're like, I'm going to have some kind of 6-month cushion just in case. But I had a little bit of a cushion, and as that's going down, it pushes me even more. But the goal is to keep going. And something that I hear a lot from my mentors and the coaches that I listen to online are keep going. They always say like a really large percentage of businesses fail in the first 2 years, but I really think it's because people don't believe in themselves that much and they don't want to keep going. So I want to just tell you guys, believe in yourself, like keep pushing. But yeah.
And I also want to add to that it doesn't come overnight too. There's times where I've lost a lot of money, didn't have money, and to be honest, I borrowed money from my family to keep my business running. But I've been fortunate enough now to kind of have a stable income from it. So yeah, that's another scary part is running out of money,
Yeah.
especially in an economy like this where everything is expensive, you know.
But
And
like I would say maybe turning the script
mm,
and saying it's also a mindset thing that I'm
mm,
learning,
mm,
not to say woe is me, not to say
yeah,
the economy, not to say it's anyone else's fault. It's purely your fault if you're not making it. And that's something difficult that I've learned.
hmm,
Um, if you want it bad enough, and this is why I respect you and your industry so much, if you want it bad enough, you're going to make it work.
yeah,
You're going to do whatever you can in order to get to that level that you want to be at. So I used to blame my family. I used to blame the economy. Sometimes I still do, but that's my weakness talking. And I realize that I have to push over that in order to be something.
right.
So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And as a business owner, like we've talked about, you're responsible for it. We decided to start our own business and we have to deal with that, you
yeah,
know? So,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say, client wise, if talking to the new personal trainers out there, the new independent coaches, what are some methods that you would say would have been good for you to find clientele?
Hmm.
Has being an IFBB Pro
Hmm.
helped open that a lot more, or
Honestly, it has helped, but not to the extent people think.
mm-hmm,
People think, oh, you become an IFBB Pro, all these opportunities are opened up for you. That's not the case. I didn't have companies running to me when I turned pro. No one came running to me. It kind of just gives you a level of credibility, I guess,
mm-hmm,
that can help bolster your clientele, help bolster that credibility of yours. But in all honesty, it doesn't really do much for you. Most people don't know what an IFBB Pro is. Most of my clients that I train personally are lifestyle clients. So when I turned pro, they were happy for me, but they're like, what is it? So
you want to tell the
yeah.
audience, like, what are the levels of bodybuilding?
So yeah, so you typically start out as an amateur, so you'll compete in the NPC, which is kind of the amateur class. Anyone can enter it. You have to be 18 or above to enter it. And then from there, if you win a local show, you qualify for a national show. And then at those national shows, you're up against really good competitors, because they're all nationally qualified as well. Kind of just depends as well on the athlete. But once you win a national show, you then turn IFBB Pro.
Once
So
you win the
one you
national
win
show.
exactly, yeah. So you win that, and then once you're an IFBB Pro, you compete at pro shows, and then there you have an opportunity to win money for placing. But that is not where pros get their money. I can tell you that winning pro shows and placing in pro shows pretty much just pays for all the food that you
The
spent for prep.
supplements and
Exactly.
everything. Yeah, which
Right.
is an
So
expensive feat. Okay.
yeah, so that is kind of how that works. But as far as like clientele, I would just recommend building up a really solid um, base at first. So whether it's doing things for free, which I did first with a lot of my friends, is I coached them for free. I actually started at a commercial gym part time first. I was at LA Fitness for a little
Okay.
bit, and so I also built a good clientele from there. And it's about developing those relationships too. Because as a personal trainer, you kind of become their therapist, their counselor, and all that. So you really develop a strong connection with a lot of these people, and I think that's what's really important is that connection you build, and that allows you to grow. Because honestly, most of my clients have just come through word of mouth. So that is honestly, I think, one of the biggest advice I can give people is just having a solid base, um, that you can grow from and create that solid base through relationships and start small. A lot of people expect, when you expect a lot of clients, they expect a lot of money, but you have to start somewhere. You start small and it'll eventually grow into what you put in.
I love it.
Yeah.
And, Alex Hormozy, one of the big guys, he also talks about delayed gratification,
Yeah.
which is something that is even more apparent when you're starting your own business. Nothing comes overnight. Uh, you have to work at it, and that's also one of the difficulties that I've learned and I'm still learning. We can't, expect the world, as Ken says. We gotta keep pushing, and it'll come. It'll come.
Mhm.
Okay, very cool.
So I wanted to talk about write-offs, with the previous tax season um, coming by or ended. I'm sure a lot of people want to write things off that they necessarily shouldn't or have questions about. So as a fitness, um, within the fitness field of finance, what are some things that you can write off? What are just some of the basic, I guess, categories that you can write off as a personal trainer or an independent contractor?
So if we're talking about an in-person trainer,
Hmm.
they're different expenses than, let's say, an online trainer. So an in-person trainer like yourself, you're going in to enrich, and you're paying the owner a rental fee, right?
Hmm.
You pay them a rent to be able to do your job there. So the biggest expense is going to be rent. And I do want to get a little technical here. So in the code, in the IRC, which is the Internal Revenue Code, we have two main sections that deal with business deductions or deductions. One is Section 162. This is something that you probably have seen on IG and talked about all the time. In order for a business deduction to be a write-off, in order for you to write it off from your income, it has to be both ordinary and necessary. So those are the two stipulations of the law. So ordinary, meaning an expense that can ordinarily be found in your trade,
Okay.
and then necessary, something that you need in order for you to do your job.
Hmm.
So, and that's why, this can be a gray area for a lot of businesses, but the best thing that me and accountants can do is utilize both the regulations, which is interpretations of the tax law, and tax court cases.
Hmm.
So those are, two places that we utilize in order to have a stronger argument if something is in the gray area. But specifically in your industry, the rental expense is going to be your biggest expense. I would say if you have any equipment that you have purchased in order to help your clients at the gym that, let's say, the gym didn't have, that's also a write-off. Your WhatsApp that you use is part of your cell phone.
Hmm.
So there's a portion of your telephone that you can write off that shows, you could utilize a percentage. I've talked about this before. Let's say you work like 80% of the time on your telephone.
Hmm.
So you take 80% of your phone bill and write that off, because we're not on our phone technically 100%
100%.
of our
Yeah.
time the time
Yeah.
for business.
Hmm.
So those are the common ones. If you're an online coach, if you have a landing page, let's say, or you pay for like a link tree, or you pay for like a Schedulicity, something like that, in order to take clients in intake forms, that is a write-off. Are there some obscure things that you've heard about or maybe want to clarify?
Um, yeah. So how about like supplements? Would that kind of count as a write-off?
Okay,
Like
so
health supplements. I mean, ranging from vitamins to like whey protein, pre-workouts, things like that, because those get pretty pricey as
so
well.
you know there's two ways to look at it. So if we're talking about the fitness trainer realm,
Mm.
then in order for Ken Garcia to go to Enrich and train me, does he actually need to take whey protein in order to do his job? The answer is no.
Right.
Right. So for your personal training business, supplements and vitamins and minerals and all that and whey protein is not a write-off. One of the biggest questions that I get asked in this field is about the supplements and the protein and all that. It's not a write-off. The tax court has ruled multiple times that those are personal things. And that also goes to clothing and haircuts and makeup and hair care. Things that are personal in nature, although some people like to argue that, in order for me to be presentable,
I was just going to mention that.
a lot of people say that, oh, I have to do this for my job. But the tax court has ruled multiple times, and taxpayers keep wanting to come to court with this to make that argument. No, it's a personal expense, because you still need to do that for yourself. So if I'm gonna go talk about the bodybuilding side now, a professional bodybuilder. And I put this in quotes because the way that we talk about it in everyday talk versus tax law talk is a different story, specifically when it comes to supplements and vitamins. So I'm going to take Ken as an example here. So, he talked about earlier the different levels of being a professional bodybuilder. In my practice, I do like to be a little more conservative when it comes to what a professional bodybuilder is. So if you're nationally qualified, if you're an IFBB Pro, I know that a pro is now a pro bodybuilder, but in the tax law's eyes, you have to see, are you making enough income to sustain yourself?
The answer is no.
So, an IFBB Pro usually, in my experience, has another job. The IRS would consider that bodybuilding as a hobby.
Even if you're a professional.
Well, this is where I go to Olympians now.
Okay.
So if we're talking Olympians, a lot of them do have brand deals. A lot of them have sponsors. But honestly, most of them still do personal training on the side as their main job. So the people that I would consider professionals in the eyes of tax law are probably going to be your first call outs in the Olympia. Okay. People who actually are winning larger prize money, or it's their earnings. That's how they make their living. A lot of them do have endorsements on top of that. But Mr. Olympia Open, Derek Lunsford, right? He made what, $500K, right? So he most likely is working 24/7 on just that. I'm not 100% sure about if he has other jobs or other kinds of income, but because of the caliber that he's at, I consider that in tax law eyes a profession.
Got it.
So it is really difficult. I get asked that by nationally qualified people, IFBB Pro people. I have all of my, my NPC card I want to deduct. I want to deduct my travel to shows. I want to deduct my tanning, my oil. So you have to kind of take a step back and say, one, how aggressive do you want to be? I'm able to give you the proper guidance and insight to see what the law is. But if you want to be aggressive, you have the option to do so. But if you're not making money from the endeavor, if it's not really a for-profit venture, a good rule that I have for this is 3 years, which is also something the IRS touches on. There's like a multitude of tests that they look for in something that is either a hobby versus a for-profit venture. And one of them is like, how many years has there been maybe 3 to 5 years of consistent income growth? Because at that point, how are you living? So it doesn't come to the level of a business, but it's a hobby.
Right.
So this is a gray area, I would have to say, like, especially in the bodybuilding realm. But a lot of the times, most individuals have another job.
Yeah.
So I work with the Olympians that kind of also see that. And you got to make a judgment call a lot of times. So I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely
Long-winded,
does.
but very important
It
to
does.
understand.
In your
Yeah.
experience, do you find that more people want to be more aggressive in terms of the write-offs?
Yes,
They do.
absolutely. And I think most taxpayers in our society these days do,
Mm-hmm.
because of, at least in California, the difficulty of, you know, the expenses that we're paying for groceries, gas, and everything else. So, you know, they want to make sure to save as much as they can. But that's where other strategies come in for your other businesses. So, yeah.
As an advisor, how do you kind of sway someone to not be as aggressive, just to kind of, stay out of trouble in that sense?
You know, I never want to push anyone to do anything. I try to give them the main rules and ideas, but I advise them of the consequences
Right.
that can arise. So let's say you're a sole proprietor, and I have gotten this question from a lot of nationally qualified people, which, in terms of bodybuilding, is not really high up. Sam, I've spent thousands of dollars traveling to different locations, my NPC card, my entrance fees, my tanning, $7,000, $10,000 right there, in addition to supplements and all that. Sam, I want to classify myself as a sole proprietor and utilize those deductions against, let's say, my main job. So once you get a Schedule C, which is what a sole proprietor is, which I believe is what you're utilizing for your taxes, you now have a business, a formal business in the IRS's eyes. But let's say you put those $10,000 of expenses on there. All right, you might make it the first year. You might make it the second year. But as you go on, if you're not making any money off of it, and now your expenses are also growing on that Schedule C, because you're also becoming more comfortable in being aggressive, then that's where things start to get dicey. Because now what's happening is that $10,000 loss is going to go against, let's say you work as an employee at another job, and it nets out, meaning $100K that you made at this job is now $90K, which means your tax burden is going to be lowered.
Right.
So, it's everything is a cost benefit analysis and a risk analysis. So, yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
I hope I didn't. Yeah.
That's why I'm not in this field, because I don't want to deal with that. I have a question for you. So when we did have a consultation together, as far as doing my taxes last year, you did mention quarterly estimated taxes. Could you go a little more into that? Because I had no idea what you were talking about. And I felt completely lost and felt like I should have done that. So I felt like I was kind of evading taxes.
I would have to say the biggest question I get after the write-offs is, Sam, what is this quarterly thing? Like, what do you mean by that? So when you're an employee, you get a paycheck, and every 2 weeks you have taxes withheld from that paycheck, right? So that means as you're making the income, the government, both Fed and state, depending on which state you live, is taking and withholding a part of your pay in order for you to meet your obligations of the law, of tax law. So when you create your business, the idea for most people is, okay, come April 15th, I can take all of my income and all of my expenses, create a profit and loss statement, see what my tax burden is, and call it a day. So there's two things wrong with this. The first is you did not make your estimated quarterly taxes during the year. So the way that works for independent contractors is there are 4 times during the year that you have to estimate, based on your profit, how much tax you're going to pay, and pay that during the year as you earn it. So a lot of people are like, how the heck am I going to do that?
Right.
That's where I come in.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to, as a business owner, be on top of your income and expenses and have a profit and loss statement and balance sheet in order to see what your position is. And it helps you as a business owner budget.
Mhm.
Helps you see, where are my costs leaking? What can I do? But on top of that, let's say that we have the first quarter of the year. The law is such that we're supposed to extrapolate how much you make the entire year after the first quarter, take that burden, divide it into 4 parts, and pay the IRS in California 4 times during the year. This matches the idea of your taxes being withheld as an employee
Makes sense.
during
Yeah.
the year. So business owners have it 4 times a year. California, technically it's 3, but that's way too specific. But we are a pay-as-you-go system. So the issue that you're running into when you wait until April 15th is you're going to be smacked with penalties and interest and not even realize it. When I prepare a lot of Schedule Cs, and that's the case, I tell them sometimes it's an astronomical price for the penalties and interest that they owe, all because they didn't have the correct guidance to make those payments during the year. And some people tell me it's a novel concept, but it's actually not, because you were already doing that as an employee. It was just taken out for
Automatically,
you.
right? Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I have to say is, just make sure you're doing that quarterly. You don't want to be stuck with a burden.
Right.
And then the second part is, as you look at your finances and budget for yourself during the year, you're also able to employ strategies in order to reduce that burden. Because again, if you wait until April 15th, you no longer have the ability to do anything because that year's already
We're done.
passed.
Right.
How can you say I paid this much in 2023 when it's already 2024?
Right.
So that's the biggest
And that's
thing.
why I also want to stress the importance of having someone who can do these kind of things, because I had no idea when Sam had contacted me for that consultation. I was like, I have to pay taxes every, quarterly. I had no idea I wasn't doing so. So I paid for it during this tax season. So definitely when you start a business, have someone who knows what they're doing as far as taxes and all that, because that's just another aspect that requires a lot of nuance. So yeah.
This definitely goes into a nice segue, that having guidance, having a mentor, having someone that you can trust and help you is, something that I've noticed in your field is a lot of bodybuilders, obviously they have prep coaches and posing coaches and nutrition coaches, but I've noticed a lot of my clients say, I'm also going to go to my prep coach to ask him about life questions,
Oh yeah.
to ask him about everyday things that I'm having issues with in my life, and being a mentor, a life coach. So I want to ask you, both Ronnie and Walker and the Physique Inc. team, tell me more about what kind of things you've gone through with them, and how did it come about that they even become a mindset coach for you?
Man, again, that's a really loaded question.
We got time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad we do, because it really is that. Most people, when they see bodybuilding, they see it as a physical sport. But when you really get into the higher levels of competition, it really does become as much mental and emotional as it is physical. And honestly, that's the hardest part, is trying to deal with the mental turmoil that comes with prep, because you are eating low calories, you're training heavily 4 to 5 times a week, doing cardio hours on end, and that takes a toll on the body and the mind, especially. And if you add that on to like a 9 to 5 job or whatever job you have, it's compounding, and it really does affect your mental state. And I remember my very first USA prep, or national show prep, was with Walker and Ronnie, and I maybe cried 6, 7
Damn.
times throughout that prep, just wanting to quit. And that was honestly one of the hardest preps that I had ever done, because they pushed me into a level of conditioning that hadn't gone before. And I remember going downstairs to do cardio in my apartment complex gym, and I literally was crying on my way to the treadmill. My mom was actually there, doing cardio, and I was crying to her, and I was telling her, like, I don't want to bodybuild anymore. I don't like this. That's how hard it was on me mentally. I thought I loved the sport. I thought I wanted to do this for a living, until I got to that point, and I was literally sobbing and telling her, like, I don't want to do this hour of cardio. I
Wow.
was so tired, so depleted. And she's like, you wanted this, Ken. You wanted this for a long time, and now you're here. So that really goes into kind of finding your why, and which is something that my mentor and my coach Ronnie had always talked to me about, is your why. Whether you're doing bodybuilding, whether you're in another field, find out why you want to do what you're doing. And he really helped me with that prep, because I really did have to find my why. Why do I want to bodybuild? Is it just to look good? Is it to impress people? And it's not that. It's because it made me feel better. It got me out of depressive state. It made me more confident, boosted my self-esteem. And it really takes an outside perspective, I think, for you to see that, because sometimes you're so in your head, especially with prep or on prep, that you don't see that. And this also just doesn't go with bodybuilding. This goes for everyone, even lifestyle clients too. It's hard, changing your body. It's hard putting yourself through that physical, quote unquote, pain, and kind of having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So being mentally strong is just as important, I think, in bodybuilding. And without Ronnie, I don't know how I would have gotten through my first prep.
Wow.
It was a tough one. Yeah, I mean, when you kind of look at bodybuilders, what do you think their mindset's like, as far as kind of confidence, or emotionally? What do you see, just from an outside perspective? Kind of curious.
It's actually funny. So when I was younger, always intimidated by the field, because you see these big guys, and you think that, you know, you think that they're conceited, if I'm being honest. But it's literally the exact opposite. They want to better themselves. And I've learned that the mentality, and I always say this, the consistency and the push and drive that they have to be great at their sport drives them in every other aspect of their life. And that is one of the main reasons why I have such a passion for health, fitness, medical, all that. It's pushing you to be your best self, but also it carries on to all aspects of your profession and personal life. And I admire you. I admire this field. It has taught me that. And the more pros and bodybuilders that I talk to, it becomes even more apparent. There was, I think his name is Danny Jacob or something like that. I don't remember the name, but on IG, he is a really, really big guy. He's an open guy. He's looking at himself in the mirror, and a guy at the gym, and he's trying to get his pump out and make sure he looks good. And a guy kind of comes by and gives him a look, and he does an aside and talks about that moment. And he says, I'm doing this for myself. You look in the mirror as well to see if you look good. I'm doing it because I want to see what my efforts have given me. So we shouldn't be intimidated by bodybuilders. They're regular people, just like everybody else, who have a passion and who want to be great in, who want to look great and feel great. So it's the mentality for me, Ken. That mentality is fantastic. So,
and I also liked how you touch on the fact that it does seep into other aspects of your life. It's not just bodybuilding. And again, that's what my coach Ronnie had talked to me about. He was building me up not to become a better bodybuilder, but to become a better person, to be a better man.
That's deep.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of the work that we put in together, and I'm really proud of the person I am now because of all that, because of all the trials and tribulations you go through. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, or I'm not saying that it's bodybuilding that'll get you to this point, but I'm just want to reiterate to people that you really do have to have a strong mindset in order to get what you want and to be the person that you want, because you have to try. You can't just sit around and expect for things to happen to you. You have to make it happen. Yeah, so
Yeah.
mindset is
Mindset.
truly, truly important.
If you really wanted it, you would do it. And
Yeah.
that's what is the biggest takeaway. If you really want something, you're going to make it happen.
Absolutely.
So, something I want to touch on that I don't know if you're comfortable talking about is gear.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Is that cool? So for the viewers, for some people who don't know, gear is the term that is used in the bodybuilding field now, but it means anabolic steroids, it means juicing, it means anabolics. There's so many names for it. But as it's become more prevalent, especially with IG and TikTok, I want to know what you have to say. What can you tell a younger audience, or what can you tell current competitors who have been doing it? What are important things to know?
That despite the fact that it is very prevalent now, everyone's really open about it. It is still a discussion that you really need to have with yourself and decide whether you want to risk the consequences of it. Honestly, now I think it's glorified to an extent that it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
I mean, I'm glad more people are open about it, but it also has a consequences of younger kids and younger athletes using it and thinking it's okay. But there are so many health ramifications that come with it too that people don't know. So I would really just advise people that may possibly want to take them is do your research first, and don't do your research on TikTok or Instagram. Do real research and really see what the consequences are. I mean, and that's the thing with social media too. You see the positive sides of steroid use. You see the nice bodies, the abs, all that, people on stage, but it comes with a lot too. Hair loss, acne, gynecomastia, which I had, and I had it removed. But that's another thing too. And it also kind of creates dysmorphia, body dysmorphia as well, which isn't really talked about much, but definitely creates that. So I would definitely say really consider it, because it can change your life for the worse, so
that's a huge decision to make, guys. So,
exactly. Yeah, and you have people like teenagers running it now, which is kind of scary. I mean, they're still developing hormonally, and they are just ruining that by introducing steroids. And I'm not necessarily for that, but the thing that I really admired about, or part of the reason why I joined Physique Inc. was their safer use protocols. Like with Walker, we hardly use any steroids to the extent that most people think. A lot of people think I'm on grams and grams of steroids, but we are really low dose, and we've made significant progress with the doses we have. And I'm grateful that he is looking out for my health and that we're taking that route, because I don't want to bodybuild till I'm 40. I want to live a long life and, have a family and all that. So I don't necessarily need, absurd amounts of steroids to do so. And, that's another decision you have to make too, is whether you really want to push the envelope or stay within a safer route, quote unquote. I mean, it's still risky in itself, but
correct me if I'm wrong. You can achieve a beautiful physique naturally.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's absolutely possible.
Yeah, 100%.
I also see a lot from non-bodybuilders who ask me about my clients. Sam, when you talk to your bodybuilder clients and when you talk to the fitness guys, like, what's that about? Like, something that I think the general population kind of thinks is as soon as you take gear, you're going to be a
Oh my God.
massive
Yeah.
guy.
Right.
They have no idea
Mm.
that actually you still need like 100% perfect diet.
Hmm.
Your training protocol has to be on point.
Hmm.
It's
Sleep,
your
stress.
sleep, stress. Like it is actually a very minute part
Mm.
of the entire protocol
Mhm.
of being a bodybuilder, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, a lot of people are probably on steroids at the gym, but you couldn't tell because they don't have the other variables down. They don't have the sleep down, the food down, the training. And so that's another thing to consider too, is make sure that you know how to train, make sure you know how to diet, make sure you can get your sleep in, make sure your mind is right. Because without all that, steroids will do nothing for you. And yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So, you know, we have a little bit of time left. Ken, something I also want to touch on is personal finance.
Hmm.
Technically, guys, I'm not a CFP, which is a certified financial planner, so I'm not allowed to give personal financial advice. But something that I have learned myself and talking to a lot of CFPs is what's called the 50-30-20 method. So if you're trying to budget and if you're trying to keep your finances in check, um, the 50-30-20 rule is a rule that can be used to, be in a better place. So what that means is of the income that you make, 50% of it should be allocated toward your needs,
Hmm.
30% for your wants, and 20% for investing.
Okay.
So this is probably another extremely difficult aspect for taxpayers to understand, or just anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be living month to month or even only by tax return time, meaning when you're ready to do your taxes and you do your income statement and your profit and loss, only then you know what actually occurred during the year.
Mhm.
No, you should be on top of your expenses every month. You should know what your outflows are. You should know how much is coming in. And, this is not a hard and fast rule, the 50-30-20 rule, but it's a nice starting point. Um, if someone were to take 20% of their income every month and invest it into something, whether you go out and buy a rental property, whether you trade it with ETFs or stocks and bonds, whether you put it into Roth IRA, any kind of investing, as long as it has some kind of compounded growth and you have that consistency, just like in bodybuilding and eating and all that, you are going to make it well off. So if that goes on autopilot, really what you're now dealing with is 80% of your income. So you can look at your net, what you're making, as okay, 20% automatically goes. So now I have to work with only 80% of what I have. Am I able to make ends meet? So then when you do an expense analysis on yourself, you realize all the food, eating out, that is, your Netflix, your multiple subscriptions, your car payments, all these things start adding up and it goes over the recommended amounts, which doesn't put you in a good place, which means now you have to go and find a job or make more money. So, you could do that. That's totally fine. But I think the importance is seeing the balance there, seeing actually how much you're budgeting every month in order to make those decisions, because you can't work year off of year.
Right.
You have to be in the know all the time.
Mhm.
So
I think that's the hard part too, is budgeting. Most people don't have any sense of where to put their money or how to budget their money. So I really think that's important. As far as like investing, what would you recommend? How would you recommend someone starting to invest? Because I personally don't have any investments. Like, how would someone jump into that 20% being investments?
So again, not a financial advisor, but because I see it all the time, I can give some, insight into this. Uh, I kind of compare it to uh, weight loss. And why I say that is you have to start small.
Hmm.
So the again, the hard and fast rule is not 20. It's you don't
Right.
have to do 20,
Hmm.
but just like it's important to lose weight gradually, you can start with 5%.
Hmm.
You can start with 10% and then make it up to 20. So take your net, see how much you make, take the percentage of that, and you can go to, let's say, Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, create an account online, very simple, and start purchasing exchange traded funds, which is one of many, 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 many different asset classes.
Hmm.
But I do also recommend to get an investment advisor.
Okay.
So I don't recommend someone and just opening it up and
Right.
putting it all themselves,
Right.
because there's something called rebalancing. There's something called, dividend yield. There's something called, there's just too many aspects
Yeah.
to know yourself, which is why also in your profession, I admire, who is good for posing, who is good for nutrition, who is good for mindset. Each person has their own strengths,
Right.
and we should go to someone who is capable and understanding of that to make the best decision.
Right.
So
So would
Yeah.
you not I wouldn't say not recommend, but what about saving? Just like putting into savings, would you advise against that, or would you just kind of do the investment because that will eventually grow?
there's two parts to that.
Mhm.
So, it's important to save for a 6-month emergency fund or
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
Some people go to a year. Save, but saving is not recommended. I personally never recommend it,
Mhm.
because you're letting inflation eat at your money.
Mhm.
The more that your money sits in a savings account, the less valuable it becomes.
Mhm.
And this is what a lot of people don't understand. If the cost of living, Ken, and all your groceries and gas and
Right.
everything is going up,
Mhm.
but your money is sitting there,
Right.
you're losing money.
Mhm.
So
Makes
a
sense.
high yield savings account, for example, instead of just a savings account which only earn
Point.
0.1%
Right.
or
Okay.
even lower,
Mhm.
not recommended.
Right.
So save for like a 6-month emergency fund,
Mhm.
and then the rest go into a high yield savings, or put some kind of return on get some kind of return on that, because you're putting yourself in a bad position.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So Ken, I wanted to thank you for coming on Financial Fitness. It means a lot to me and the viewers, getting your background, seeing what your why is. Appreciate you, brother.
And thank you for having me, Sam. This
course.
is my very first podcast, so if I seem a little nervous, I apologize. But yeah, it was great to be here. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, guys.